Beyond that chain-link fence, under the sickly glow of handmade street lamps, a perfect miniature town sat where no town should be. The air carried the scent of damp earth and something metallic, like old coins left in the rain. Every window in those tiny homes was dark, except one. From that lit window came a sound, not of life, but of meticulous, endless movement. The soft, rhythmic scratch of a tiny blade on wood. Then, the scratching stopped. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was a held breath, a presence waiting for its cue. And from the center of that impossible town, a new sound began. The faint, precise click of a tiny door unlatching. Whoever built this place wasn't making a model. They were building a trap. Dozens of children, ages 6 to 12, moved in eerie, total silence, their small hands packing mud and sticks into a crude wall. A girl of about 9 turned slowly, her dirt-smudged face locking directly on the camera lens. Her eyes held a chilling, ancient fear that seemed to swallow the light. She leaned forward, her whisper a dry rasp in the heavy air. They sound right. They look exactly right, but they always get the love wrong. From the absolute darkness behind the camera, a voice, distorted, cloyingly sweet. It scrapes against the air, thick with the scent of ozone and old perfume. Emily? Sweetheart? The girl's eyes widened in pure terror as the words echoed in the small room. The screen cut to black with a sharp, chilling sound that lingered in the air like ozone after a storm. A title card appeared, stark white letters bleeding into the void. In the woods outside Redwood, Ohio, there is a town you won't find on any map, built by hand, by children, for one singular purpose: to hide from the things that wear their parents' faces. Redwood was the picture of American quiet, a place of good schools and big backyards that drew John and Sarah Miller. But beneath that serene surface, the air carried a faint, metallic tang, like ozone after a distant storm. A quiet so profound it felt less like peace and more like a held breath, waiting to be broken. Leo was 10, a quiet boy who built elaborate forts from blankets and chairs. His sister Chloe, 7, was all scraped knees and boundless imagination. The first sign wasn't a sound. It was the sudden, metallic scent of ozone that settled in the air. The scent hit him first, a metallic tang mixed with ozone, like lightning had struck somewhere close. It wasn't the smell of pancakes or coffee. This was sharp, chemical, and raw. The air in the room seemed to thicken, pressing against his skin with a static charge. His breath caught. "Mom, your perfume smells different today." "It's a new one, honey." Then, it was the touch. John's goodnight embrace felt unnervingly cool and dry, like brittle parchment against Chloe's skin. He called her kiddo, a term that had never before passed his lips. The word hung in the air, carrying the faint scent of ozone and old paper. Something was profoundly wrong with the man who tucked her in that night. He would linger over family photos, his gaze unnervingly intent, like memorizing faces for some unknown purpose. A cold, damp stillness settled over the house, broken only by the faint, metallic scent of ozone. The children named it the wrongness, a creeping dread that seeped into the very walls. It was a palpable presence, a sticky, suffocating weight in the air that whispered of something profoundly amiss. But it wasn't just their parents. Mike from next door, who'd thrown a perfect curveball for years, suddenly couldn't remember how to grip a baseball. Then Mrs. Henderson offered Chloe a cookie that tasted like damp, freshly turned soil. Chloe's face contorted as the earthy grit coated her tongue, the sweetness replaced by the scent of wet earth and something faintly metallic. These weren't isolated incidents. They were subtle, creeping signs that something fundamental in the neighborhood was unraveling. The adults of Redwood were being replaced, piece by piece, and only the children seemed to notice. The escalation began subtly at first, a strange, metallic scent hanging in the air after a parent passed by. Then came the whispers, not from mouths, but from the walls themselves, a dry, papery rustle that spoke in stolen voices, and the touches grew cold, leaving a damp, sticky residue that smelled of ozone and old soil. The woods behind Leo's house grew heavy as dusk settled in. Inside their makeshift fort, Leo and Chloe were joined by Jake, serious and watchful at 11, and Maya, clever beyond her 8 years. Maya's voice cut the quiet, her tone oddly flat. "My dad asked about my cellular device today." She paused, the air in the fort growing still. "He's a tech guy. He called it that. Cellular device." My mother attempted to make meatloaf. It was nothing more than raw, ground beef, sitting in the loaf pan. The coppery scent of raw meat hung thick in the air, mingling with a faint, unsettling sweetness. My breath caught, my focus narrowing to that pan. It wasn't cooking, it was just waiting. Her unblinking stare followed my every movement, a silent pressure building as she anticipated my first bite. The air in the room grew dense with the scent of iron and something faintly sweet, like old flowers left to rot. Leo's voice crackled through the walkie-talkie, sharp and urgent, cutting through the heavy quiet. "We need a hidden place," he insisted. "A sanctuary with strict rules they'd never think to breach." The children leaned in, the camera pushing close. Leo's voice dropped to a rasp, heavy with warning. "Rule 1. They can mimic a voice or a face, but they can't remember love. Use that against them. Rule 2. They despise running water. It's a primal aversion. The sound disorients them, throwing their primal instincts into chaos. Rule 3. They never venture deep into the ancient woods. Something about those old roots stirs a deep, instinctive dread. The air grows heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay as the children gather supplies in secret. Under cover of darkness, they pilfered flashlights, blankets, and canned goods from neighborhood garages. Their silent, coordinated movements led them deep into the woods, where they began clearing a circle of land. And so, New Haven was born, starting as nothing more than a hidden campsite in the wilderness. The scent of damp earth and pine sap filled the air as their quiet work continued through the night. Then, with a desperate child's ingenuity, it grew. A main street of packed earth emerged. Shelters woven from snapped branches and stolen, tattered tarps huddled in the gloom. The heart of it all was a kala, town hall, carved deep within the hollow of a massive, ancient oak. The air there carried the scent of wet soil, splintered wood, and something faintly metallic. They constructed a perimeter of strings and cans for crude alarms. They diverted a tiny creek to form a protective moat. This was their world, a functional mirror of the one they'd lost. But here they made the rules. A child's crude drawing was nailed to a nearby tree. The crude drawing showed a house with 2 stick figures, their smiles grotesquely wide and jagged, filled with needle-like teeth. The title beneath it read, "How to Spot a Thing." One night, 6-year-old Ben was caught trying to sneak back to his house for his teddy bear. From the dark tree line, his father watched, its head tilted at a perfect, unnatural 30-degree angle. A voice, flat and echoing like a sound from an empty well, cut through the still air. "Benjamin." The scent of ozone and damp earth washed over him, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Ben froze as the words echoed, tears tracing hot paths down his cheeks. Maya seized his arm, her grip like iron, and yanked him behind the freshly built mud barrier. Her whisper was a venomous hiss that carried the scent of damp earth and something metallic. "It's not your bear," she breathed, the words hanging in the thick, oppressive air between them. "It never is." The rain became a torrential downpour, hammering the earth with relentless fury. The creek, now a swollen lake, churned with black water, overflowing its banks. The air grew thick with the smell of wet earth and ozone, a metallic taste on the tongue. The taut string alarms now hung limp and slack in the downpour. Inside the town hall, the children clustered together, their small bodies pressed against one another, listening to the relentless drumming on the tin roof. Then, beneath the storm's rhythm, a new sound emerged. A slow, wet, and unnervingly synchronized squelching from the mud outside. Through a gap in the wall's planking, a child's terrified eye saw dozens of silhouetted figures standing perfectly still at the very edge of the woods. In the torrential downpour, John and Sarah Miller stood motionless, their soaked clothing clinging to skin that appeared unnervingly waxing with each lightning strike. Sarah's voice cut through the storm, a sickly sweet call that carried an unsettling familiarity. "Leo! Chloe!" she called, the names hanging in the damp air like a forgotten promise. The ozone scent of the storm, mixed with something faintly metallic, a primal warning in the charged atmosphere. The woman's voice called out with false warning. "You'll catch your death out here. We made hot chocolate." Her lips kept moving in that fixed grin, but the words fell out of sync. A grotesque puppet show. Then John's voice boomed, a perfect mimic but unnaturally loud, shaking the air. "Son, it's time to come home." The game was over. The children stood frozen, their bodies locked in place as the things advanced. They moved with an unhurried, deliberate pace, each step sinking deep into the churned mud with a wet, sucking sound. The air grew thick with the scent of wet earth and something metallic, like old iron. The rain rule, their one hope, had failed. It offered no protection. The water wasn't confusing them. They had adapted, Leo whispered to himself. The truth dawned. It wasn't the sound. It was the current. Still water left them undisturbed. His gaze snapped to their diverted creek, now a rushing, shallow stream carving a cold, wet scar through the heart of the rain. The air grew heavy with the smell of wet earth and iron as the idea struck him, sharp and terrible. His voice cut through the damp night, a command laced with raw urgency. "Jake, the shovels!" The old creek-bed ditch. Now, the older kids scrambled, their movements frantic and uncoordinated, as the cold rainwater soaked through their clothes. They dug with desperate urgency, the metallic scrape of shovel blades against stone echoing through the downpour. Every frantic scoop redirected the flood's path. A desperate race against the rising water that smelled of wet earth and decay. They aren't building a wall. They're carving a channel directly between New Haven and the advancing shapes. The things are much nearer now. The camera finds Sarah's face. It is her, but her expression holds only a vacant, ravenous curiosity. John's neck extended unnaturally as he tasted the charged air. With a final desperate effort, the children broke through the last soil barrier. The overwhelmed creek surged into the new channel, creating a roaring, fast-moving barrier between them and the things. The effect was immediate. The things halted, their hollow stares fixed on the impassable, rushing water. Their heads twitched unnaturally, their smooth, mimicked faces flickering for a split second to reveal something hollow beneath shifting clay and dark hollows where eyes should be. They let out a unified, frustrated sound. Not a scream, but a low, vibrational hum that resonated in the children's bones, making their teeth ache. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and damp earth. As Chloe cried out over the rushing water, her voice raw with terror. "You're not my mom," she yelled, the words cutting through the hum. "You don't know what love feels like." Sarah Thing's head snapped toward Chloe, that sweet smile returning rigid and terrifying. "We are learning," it said, the words carrying a metallic taste of ozone in the air. The conclusion arrived with a sudden scene change. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving behind a damp chill that clung to everything. The rushing water had dwindled to a steady, muddy stream. The things were gone, vanished into the night, as if they'd never been. The children sat among their tiny, sodden buildings, coated in grime and exhaustion, their small bodies trembling with the aftermath. The air hung thick with the scent of wet earth, and something faintly metallic, a lingering trace of the terror that had passed, but they were alive. The children of New Haven had survived the night. They discovered they could fight back. But a more terrifying truth soon dawned. The things were adaptable, patient, and they were learning. In the fading light, Leo pulled a plastic bag from his pocket, his fingers trembling as they brushed against a single Polaroid of his real family. A ghost of a life now lost. He lifted his gaze toward the encroaching woods, where the air carried the faint, metallic scent of ozone and the damp chill of impending rain. On a makeshift watchtower, Jake stood perpetual vigil, his silhouetted stark against the blue sky, every muscle taut with readiness. Below, Maya moved among the younger survivors, her hands guiding theirs as they rasped sticks into sharpened spears, the sound a steady, grim whisper against the gathering dark. Chloe traces a house in the mud, its door a gaping, fanged maw. The camera drifts upward through the dense, shadowed canopy, revealing a desperate, hidden town nestled in the woods. It pulls back further, over the pristine streets of Redwood, where A, father, flips burgers with unnatural precision, and A, mother, waves from her porch, her arms swinging in a smooth, metronomic arc. So if you ever drive through a town too quiet, too perfect, if the adults all seem just a little too friendly, a little too similar, look to the woods, listen for the silence, and ask yourself, if the children here had to build a secret world to feel safe, what exactly are they hiding from?